Hello, sleepy dreamer. How you doing? Tonight I'll be your guide, here to ease you into calm, restful sleep. Before we get started, remember to like the video and subscribe so you won't miss future scary bedtime stories. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Also, let me know if there's a story you'd love to hear next. I was never the type who dreamed about an extravagant wedding. A quick courthouse signing seemed perfect for me. One witness, a short vow, a kiss, and done. That was all I wanted. But my husband Daniel had a different vision. He thought we deserved to do things properly afterward, which to him meant a real honeymoon. Just us two, no plans, no responsibilities, no awkward family situations. Simply 1 week to unwind and breathe after the tension of getting married. We booked the Palisade Resort and Spa, a luxury hotel just outside the main strip in Summerfield, Nevada. Not as overwhelming or noisy as the ones downtown, but close enough to feel the chaos. The place was known for its privacy and refined atmosphere, the kind of hotel celebrities used when they wanted to vanish. Daniel managed to score a deal on a honeymoon suite, marble flooring, a king-sized bed, a balcony with a skyline view, and even a whirlpool tub. He was thrilled, practically glowing, as we rolled up in our rented sedan. I was just glad we had survived the drive from Phoenix without killing each other. We arrived a little before sundown. The lobby smelled of citrus and eucalyptus, with soft jazz flowing from hidden speakers. A young receptionist with flawless teeth handed us our key cards, congratulating us with almost exaggerated enthusiasm. I assumed it was part of her training. Elevator ride up, 9th floor, room 932. The second the door opened, I felt it. Something wasn't right. Daniel rushed to the window to admire the view, but I froze at the threshold. A stench, sour, stale, and deeply wrong, hit me so hard I turned my head away. It wasn't the usual hotel odor. Not sweat, not mold. This was heavier, almost decaying, though faint enough that someone had tried to mask it. "Do you smell that?" I asked. He was tugging at the blinds. "Huh? Oh yeah, it's not great. Probably the AC." He leaned toward the vent, then sniffed at the carpet. "They must have cleaned too recently." I said nothing, dragging my suitcase into a corner before sitting on the bed. The smell washed over me again, stronger this time. It came in waves, like it had seeped into the very walls. I brushed my hand over the nightstand. Sticky. Dust lined the corners. A faint brown stain stretched beneath the armchair. My gut twisted. Daniel collapsed on the bed like a kid. "Relax, babe. It's not that bad. Give it a little time. We've been on the road for 6 hours. You're just being sensitive." I ignored him and dialed the front desk. The manager's voice was crisp and polite. "My apologies, Mrs. Collins. Sadly, we're at full capacity this week with the International Tech Expo in town. Still, I'll send our housekeeping lead right away to freshen the suite. And in the meantime, we'd love to treat you and your husband to dinner at our steakhouse across the courtyard." I agreed. It felt like a fair offer. Dinner ended up being excellent, far better than I anticipated. For a while, I forgot about the strange odor and let Daniel entertain me with wine, jokes, and funny stories about his old college roommate's infamous wedding speech. We laughed, flirted, and talked about sightseeing plans. Maybe Red Rock Canyon or Hoover Dam. It felt normal, until we came back. Before I even pushed the door fully open, I knew the smell was still there. Daniel's grin disappeared instantly. "What the hell?" he muttered. We stepped inside, and the stench was sharper now, with a metallic bite like rust or blood. He shut the door, grimacing. "That's disgusting. They didn't fix a thing." My eyes locked on the pristine white bedding, the perfectly puffed pillows, and the lemon-scented spray lingering desperately near the vents. "I want to leave," I whispered. Daniel began pacing. "They said they're full, remember? Let me call back and raise hell. They'll have to find something." 10 minutes later, he returned, frustrated. "Nothing. Every single room in the city is booked, even the cheap motels. They just offered to send housekeeping again." I curled up on the bed. "It's not just dirt, Daniel. It's wrong, like it's inside the walls." We searched everything, drawers, fridge, bathroom cabinet, but came up empty. The smell clung like smoke. We went back downstairs, walked through the casino floor, grabbed coffee, anything to avoid that room. Still, the unease clung to me, like invisible eyes followed us everywhere. When we returned the second time, Daniel slammed the door shut. "That's it. I'm tearing this place apart." He climbed on a chair to check the vents, rifled through the minibar, the closet, the bathroom mats, even lifted the toilet tank lid. I didn't want to participate, but sitting idle felt worse. I stripped back the bedspread, then the top sheet, Everything looked spotless, plain and unremarkable. Then my eyes caught it, a faint black smear along the side of the box spring like soot. "Daniel," I called, my voice faint. He rushed over. "What is it?" "I'm not sure." I tugged the mattress with both arms. It was heavy, but slid enough to expose the side of the frame. That's when we saw it. A hand, pale, swollen, waxy, jammed between the box spring and the frame, fingers curled stiff like a dead spider. The wrist was discolored, dark, and the rest of the arm disappeared into the wood as if shoved there violently and abandoned. I screamed. Daniel stumbled back. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he grabbed me. "Call 911, now." The next hours blurred into chaos. The hotel evacuated the entire floor. Sirens, detectives, officers, cameras, EMTs, and yellow tape surrounded us. They pulled the rest of the body from inside the frame, stuffed inside a dirty blanket. A woman, maybe in her 30s. No identification, no missing person report that matched. The coroner estimated she'd been dead at least 5 days. Other guests had complained before about the odor, but staff brushed it off, assuming it came from the pipes. The mattress had muffled the worst. Housekeeping had changed the linens multiple times, not realizing they were covering a corpse. Daniel and I gave statements. They relocated us to another hotel that night, escorted by police. We didn't talk. We didn't sleep. We lay on top of the covers in silence until dawn. I canceled the rest of the trip. We drove back to Arizona that afternoon. The hotel offered us a complete refund and a lifetime complimentary stay as if we would ever return. Weeks passed, but the woman was never identified. No one came forward. No news covered it. Just a silent death, hidden beneath other people's vacations. Daniel and I never fully recovered. Every hotel since. We sniffed the air, checked beneath every bed, open every closet. He speaks less than before. I sometimes wake at night, convinced I still smell her. They say your honeymoon marks a beginning, the first page of your life together. For us, it was our first true lesson. Sometimes horror doesn't chase you. It doesn't creep. Sometimes it simply waits under the bed you're already sleeping on. I was 16 when the way I saw vacations and strangers shifted forever. What began as something magical unraveled into something I still can't forget. My grandparents decided to surprise the entire extended family with a 10-day cruise through the Caribbean, traveling across the Florida Keys and the Bahamas, and it felt like stepping into a dream. The cruise line was called Horizon Seas, and the ship we boarded was named the Meridian Star. It was one of those massive luxury liners that felt more like a moving metropolis than an actual vessel. 12 levels, 5 swimming pools, its own theater, bars, clubs, and more restaurants than anyone could try in a week. There were 13 of us in total. I, Eva, my older brother Lucas, 20, my younger brother Ryan, 14, and my sister Lila, 18, who had brought her boyfriend Mark, my parents, Aunt Diane and Uncle Greg, my cousins Ruby and Max, and finally our grandparents, Margaret and Henry. Since the cabins were given out based on the number of adults, Lucas wasn't supposed to share with me, but he claimed our dad was in his room, and no one bothered to verify it. That left me free to stay with him. As long as my makeup or clothes weren't lying in plain sight, no one noticed. I loved sharing the space with Lucas. He was the sibling I felt closest to. Clever, hilarious, protective in the right ways, and he always treated me as his equal. We spent most of the first days together, raiding the buffet, wandering through different decks, and swimming in the saltwater pools high above the sea. At night, Lucas would head to one of the adult lounges or bars, while I would either go to bed early or spend time with Lila and Mark. But on the fourth night, everything shifted in a way so subtle that I almost didn't recognize it until it had gone too far. That night began in the ship's nightclub. I wasn't supposed to be inside since you had to be 18, but at 16 I could pass for older, and I borrowed Ruby's ID for the night since she wasn't planning to go out. She was only 15, and anyone could see she wasn't me, but the staff didn't look closely. Lucas was already there when I slipped in through a side entrance. The air shook with bass from a pop remix, and the place glowed with alternating blue and violet lights. Lucas raised his glass toward me from the bar. I wasn't drinking, just wanting to dance a little and absorb the atmosphere. But before I crossed the room, I felt something odd. It was that unnerving sense when someone's eyes don't just glance but fix on you with purpose. Slowly I searched the crowd and saw him. A man in his late 40s, maybe older, seated alone against the far wall. His skin pale, his dark hair thinning, his shirt rumpled linen. One hand around a drink, the other still on his knee, and his gaze trained unblinking on me. I tried convincing myself it was a mistake. I shifted left, and his head followed. I moved right, and still his eyes clung to me. Beneath the colored lights, my skin prickled. He wasn't casual. His expression wasn't empty. It was deliberate, like he had chosen me from a lineup. I went straight to Lucas, acting like nothing was wrong. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my distraction. "Yeah, just hot in here," I lied. A few minutes later, I leaned closer. "I'm going to see what Lila and Mark are up to. I'll meet you back at the room." He nodded, unconvinced. I told him to text if he left early. Outside the club, I found Lila and Mark at the martini bar, laughing and leaning into each other. I sat nearby, trying to steady myself, but my nerves wouldn't settle. Then I spotted him again. The same man now seated across from us, alone as before, but this time without even pretending to hold a drink. Just those unwavering eyes fixed on me. My hands pressed against my knees as I tried to rationalize it away. Lila nudged me. "You okay? You look off." "I'm fine, just tired," I answered too quickly. I didn't tell her. I can't explain why. Maybe I didn't want to sound overdramatic. Maybe I thought no one would really believe me. Or maybe I was scared of ruining the evening. A little later, I left to head back. The corridors were mostly empty, glowing faintly with amber lights, and each step of my sandals echoed louder than it should have. Every few seconds I looked behind me, but nothing moved. Our cabin was midship on deck 7. When I turned the last corner, I froze. The door stood open a few inches. The light was on inside. We had locked it earlier. I knew we had. I had heard the latch click when Lucas left. My fingers trembled as I nudged the door. "Lucas," I whispered. No answer. The room felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. I scanned everything carefully. The bed's untouched. My backpack exactly where I left it. The bathroom door half open. Nothing. I stood there for a full minute before deciding maybe Lucas forgot to close it all the way, or housekeeping slipped in by mistake. I changed into a t-shirt and shorts and slid under the blanket, but sleep didn't come easy. That man's blank stare followed me even with my eyes shut. At some point, I drifted into uneasy rest. I don't know how much time passed before I woke to something brushing across my cheek. Not the sheet, not a bug, but unmistakably a hand. My eyes snapped open. "Lucas?" I whispered. Silence, and then I saw the figure standing beside my bed. Tall, shadowed. Lucas's bed was empty. A scream tore out of me before my mind even caught up. The man lunged, maybe to cover my mouth, but I was already thrashing backward against the wall, shrieking. The door burst open. Lucas stormed inside and slammed into him, dragging him down, fists flying. I couldn't stop screaming, my voice raw, kicking at the man's side while my hands shook so violently I could barely keep upright. The hallway erupted with noise, footsteps pounding, doors opening. My father appeared first, followed by security, and guests peered from their cabins. The man didn't resist, just muttered to himself with a dazed expression that will never leave my memory. Security cuffed him and dragged him away. I sat wrapped in a blanket, trembling so hard my teeth knocked together. Lucas never left my side. I cried until my whole body ached. Later, security explained he had somehow stolen or created a duplicate key card. They weren't sure how. Their guess was he had been watching passengers and memorizing room numbers. He had a solo cabin far below, traveling alone, no criminal history, no flagged alerts. He was locked in the brig for the remainder of the trip and turned over to police when we docked. I never learned his full name. What I know is that he had been following me, slipping into our room when he thought no one was there. He carried no bag, no weapon, only his hands and intentions I still refused to picture. I couldn't bring myself to stay. The next morning, when we stopped in Nassau, my parents arranged flights home. I never set foot on a cruise ship again. I don't share hotel rooms with strangers, and I never again ignore instincts that tell me danger is near. Because sometimes the most terrifying places aren't supernatural. They're just places where someone is quietly watching, calculating, and waiting. If you ever sense someone watching, trust it. Speak up. Leave. You're not exaggerating. You're protecting yourself. I never expected our honeymoon to end with police reports and a carpet stained in blood. We had only been married for 5 days. After months of planning and the rush of a long-awaited ceremony, we finally found ourselves in what felt like paradise. My wife Eliza and I had reserved a week-long getaway on the island of Kahelu, a small but stunning Pacific destination rarely crowded with tourists. It was the perfect alternative to the bustling chaos of Maui or Oahu. Quiet, green, and breathtakingly calm, it seemed designed for escape. Our boutique resort was perched along the shoreline, offering open-air corridors, hammocks on each balcony, and fresh tropical juice delivered each morning. It was the first trip we had taken together as husband and wife, away from family, obligations, and every routine that had defined our lives up until that point. The first 3 days were blissful. We overslept, ate way too much local cuisine, and watched sunsets bathe the horizon in fiery orange. I found myself thinking how fortunate I was to be with Eliza, the way her skin glowed in sunlight, the freckles across her shoulder, and how she nibbled her lip studying maps of hiking trails. But by the 4th morning, everything shifted. It began on the beach. We had wandered 10 minutes from our resort to a public shore, carrying a small cooler stocked with fruit, juice, and a couple of chilled beers. The sand burned beneath our feet. The ocean felt like a warm bath, and the breeze was steady and soft. While I stretched out on my towel, Eliza strolled along the shoreline, snapping pictures for her social media. She came back grinning. "You look half dead," she teased, nudging my leg with her foot. "This is vacation mode. I'm recharging," I replied, eyes still shut. She laughed, tossed down her towel, then announced she was heading to the restroom. I lifted one eyelid and lazily gave her a thumbs up. 10 minutes ticked by, then 15. I glanced toward the palm-shaded bathroom area. Families wandered nearby. A man practiced yoga beside a rock. Children ran in the surf. But no Eliza. Just as I was about to check, she hurried back, moving fast. She leaned close and whispered. There was a man outside the women's restroom. He just stared at me. Didn't say a word. When I walked out, he stepped into the path like he meant to block me. I bolted upright. "What? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said. 2 women came up behind me, so he slid aside. I just rushed away. She turned to point, but the man had vanished. Tall, pale, long unkempt hair, red shirt. She said she hadn't dared to study him longer. We packed immediately and left the beach. On the way back, we spotted a bike patrol officer. Eliza explained, and he jotted notes, promising to circle back. We convinced ourselves it was just a random oddball, harmless. We weren't going to let him shatter our honeymoon. That evening, we dressed for dinner. We found a restaurant called Drift and Tide, only 2 blocks away, with an open deck that overlooked the cliffs above the sea. Eliza wore an emerald dress that slipped from one shoulder, and under the lantern glow, she looked like something out of a glossy magazine. Over grilled snapper and cocktails with fresh mango, we even laughed off the earlier scare. Probably just stoned. I joked. She rolled her eyes. Still creepy. After dinner, we wandered through a lively night market, browsing handmade jewelry, carved sea turtles, listening to music beneath strings of glowing lights. Locals danced barefoot in the sand while tourists clapped along. We didn't return to our room, number 312, until after midnight. We showered, dimmed the lamps, and curled up in the enormous bed. I remember thinking the day had ended beautifully. Then came the knock. 3 quiet taps. Eliza shot me a puzzled look. "Did you order room service?" I shook my head. We weren't expecting anyone. I crept to the door, leaving the chain latch secured, and peered through the peephole. A man in a maid's uniform stood there. The beige housekeeping outfit, the name tag reading Jonas. The long greasy hair. His face looked unnervingly familiar. I cracked the door a sliver. "Can I help you?" He didn't smile. "I left something in your room earlier. Just need to grab it." My reply was firm. "We didn't have housekeeping today." The sign was on the door. He tilted his head. "Just a second." Behind me, Eliza stepped into view, then screamed, "That's him. That's the guy from the beach." In that instant, the man rammed the door. The chain strained but held. His arm thrust through the gap, groping for the latch. I slammed the door shut, unhooked the chain, and threw it open to force him back. "What's your problem?" I shouted. That's when I noticed his other hand pulling a folding knife from behind his back. He lunged, seizing my throat, shoving me against the hallway wall. The blade slashed near my face, missing by inches as I ducked. Eliza's scream rang out, but this time it was followed by a loud crack. She'd smashed a lamp over his head. Blood streamed as he staggered backward, then bolted down the corridor. I gasped for air while Eliza clutched my arm. "Call the police now." Guests poured out in nightclothes, shouting. Panicked. Someone screamed about a man with a knife. Security arrived, then officers. They collected statements, interviewed witnesses, and reviewed footage. It turned out the intruder had slipped in through a staff entrance with a stolen access badge. He wasn't employed by the hotel. Investigators found his knife discarded in the stairwell. The uniform had likely been stolen from laundry. Cameras never caught a full shot of his face, but when they replayed footage, Eliza confirmed his identity. The hotel moved us into a different suite, reinforced locks, no balcony. We didn't sleep. 2 days later, the police called. A suspect had been arrested near the marina trying to break into another hotel. His bag contained multiple stolen uniforms, duct tape, pepper spray, and another knife. His name was Malcolm Havers. Prior arrests included stalking. After that, our honeymoon blurred into unease. We didn't return to the beaches. We avoided streets after sundown. Most of our time was spent inside, watching local broadcasts, speculating about how close we had come to not making it home. If Eliza hadn't recognized him, if the chain latch hadn't held, if the lamp hadn't been there. Even now, Eliza sometimes wakes gasping in the night. I find myself rechecking locks compulsively. The wedding photos still hang above our fireplace, but we almost never speak of that trip. Not because it slipped away, but because we barely survived it. I was never fond of late-night driving, especially with my family along, but our budget was tight, and every bit of savings mattered. It was the second day of our road trip from Trenton, New Jersey to Clearwater, Florida. My wife Sophia, our son Caleb, who had just turned 11, our daughter Lily at 6, and myself, Marcus. The original plan was to break the trip in 2 parts, resting overnight halfway. But after spending more than we expected on fuel and meals the first day, I decided we'd push through to Florida by dawn. That way we'd avoid a hotel bill and get the kids to Disney sooner. At about 10:50 p.m. we entered Georgia. We had just passed the Welcome Center and the children were finally asleep in the back. Sophia was dozing in the passenger seat with her hood pulled low. The steady drone of the road was the only sound around me. The highway was unnervingly silent. No vehicles ahead, none behind. Just endless stretches of blackness cut by the glow of occasional signs and reflective posts. We were maybe 40 minutes from the Florida line when I spotted it. 2 red blinking lights close to the ground. Not the type you'd see on a patrol car. These were smaller, more like flares or distress markers. Instinctively, I eased off the gas. As we neared, it became clear they were placed on either side of a dark-colored sedan angled across the 2-lane road. 2 orange cones stood neatly next to it, positioned with careful intent. The entire scene screamed trap. I slowed nearly to a crawl. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. Sophia stirred awake. "What's happening?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Something's blocking the road," I replied, tightening my grip on the wheel. As my headlights swept across, 2 hooded figures stepped out from behind the car, walking deliberately toward us. Male, young, one raised his hand, either a wave or some signal. I lowered my window just an inch as the nearest one approached on my side. He leaned in. I caught the metallic glint of a chain at his neck and the stench of smoke and sweat. "You good, man?" I asked wearily. "Yeah," he replied. "Open the door a sec. Need to ask you something." His tone was too smooth, too casual. It didn't sit right. My pulse sped up. Glancing at the side mirror, I saw the other guy edging toward the passenger door. "No," I snapped, rolling the window up. That's when the one by me slipped his hand into his hoodie pocket. "Forget this." I threw the car in reverse, spun the wheel, tires screeching. Sophia yelped. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "They're not stranded," I shouted, flooring it forward again. "It's a trap." I aimed at the edge of their blockade, praying the tires would hold. We clipped a cone, crushed one of the red lights under the wheel, and shot past their car by inches. Sophia twisted in her seat. Who were they? What's happening? I checked the mirror. No headlights. I exhaled, trying to steady the adrenaline tearing through me. "I don't know," I said, "but we're getting out of here." For 30 seconds, the road behind stayed empty. Then headlights appeared. One pair, closing in fast. "Marcus," Sophia's voice trembled. "Is that them?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. They were accelerating hard. "Are they chasing us?" Caleb's frightened voice came from the back, half awake. "Everyone stay quiet," I ordered, keeping my tone level, though inside it was chaos. The car tailing us started flashing its lights. I pressed harder on the pedal. The speedometer read 80 when pop. The whole SUV jolted. I swerved onto the rumble strip, regaining control. "What was that?" Sophia gasped. "I don't know, I think they hit a tire." Then another pop. Steering went slack, like something was dragging us down. We wouldn't get far. Sophia grabbed her phone. "I'm calling 911. "Good," I said, fighting the wheel. "Stay calm." The kids were crying now. Lily curled up in her booster, hands over her ears. Caleb shouted questions I couldn't answer. I kept the SUV moving despite the drag. Then bam, their vehicle slammed into our rear. Screams filled the cabin. I could feel every ounce of my family's fear weighing on me. My knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. "Please," Sophia cried into the phone, "please send help. We're on I-75 South, past exit 93. They're chasing us. We have children. They're hitting us." Another violent crash from behind, and then like salvation, flashing red and blue. A patrol car barreled toward us, lights blazing, siren piercing. The moment our pursuers saw it, they swerved onto an exit ramp and vanished. The cruiser followed without pause. I pulled to the shoulder, chest heaving. "We're okay," I whispered, voice breaking. "We're safe now." 15 minutes later, another squad car and a tow truck arrived. I spoke to the officers while Sophia clung to the kids. Both rear tires had been shot out, likely with a small caliber weapon, maybe from inside their own car with a silencer. These weren't amateurs. They had done this before. Officers told us we weren't the first. The previous night, a lone woman had stumbled on the same setup and managed to reverse out. She'd reported it, but when police reached the scene, it was gone. No car, no cones, no lights. We were the first ones to encounter them mid-act. Traffic cam records showed they had run our plates earlier that evening. Lying in wait for the right type of victim. Late-night family drivers, easy to corner. We spent that night at a Holiday Inn near Valdosta. Disney had to wait another day. Caleb refused to sleep without the lights on. Lily wouldn't let go of Sophia's arm. I couldn't keep my eyes shut for more than minutes at a time, jerking awake at every sound outside. Months have passed since, and I still can't drive at night without glancing in the rear view every few seconds. Not because I expect them back, but because I understand now how quickly things can unravel. One quiet stretch of road, one family cutting corners, 1 mile too far, and everything can change. I never had much interest in mountain trips. My preference has always leaned toward the shore. Give me sunshine, rolling waves, a cold drink, and a cheap chair stuck in the sand. That's where I feel at home. My wife Marissa, on the other hand, was raised around ridges and tall evergreens. Her parents took her camping every summer. Timber cabins, endless trails, fire rings, the works. So when she stumbled on this small hidden lodge nestled among pines about 4 hours north of us, I agreed to it. A quiet holiday tucked in the mountains, just the two of us. No cell phones, no office deadlines, no neighbors. It seemed appealing enough in theory. We left early Friday morning in Marissa's worn-out Subaru, crawling up twisting forest roads. The resort was called Cedar Hollow Retreat, a family-run property that had been around since the 1960s. Over the years, they'd installed updated bathrooms and replaced mattresses, but most of it retained that rustic vintage character. The online photos had shown cabins with exposed beams, brick fireplaces, and trees stretching endlessly. What sealed the deal for Marissa was their special hideaway package, offered only a few times each year. Adults only, no children allowed, and a cap on reservations. On the way there, she read me the agenda: multi-course dinners, live acoustic sets, wine by the fire, sunrise yoga. I just smiled quietly. I didn't want to dim her excitement. We pulled in around mid-afternoon, sunlight cutting through the tall branches like sharp blades. Only a few other cars sat in the gravel lot. The main lodge itself looked like it belonged on a greeting card. Shuttered windows, big double doors, a porch that wrapped around the building with weathered rocking chairs creaking in the breeze. It was the type of place that might feel cozy in winter snow, or unsettling if you found yourself alone there. Behind the desk was a woman named Claire, maybe mid-50s, her smile wide and practiced. She gave us a canvas tote stamped with the resort logo, filled with stainless bottles, a trail guide, and the weekend schedule. "Cabin 7 is yours," she announced proudly. "King bed, private deck, wood stove if you want a fire, and no one staying in cabin 6, so you've got space to yourselves." Marissa lit up at that. The path to cabin 7 was gravel lined with solar lanterns. The interior smelled of cedar mixed with faint cleaner. The huge bed was covered with a plaid comforter. The small kitchen corner had a 2-burner stove, and a glass door opened to a porch staring into dense woods. The bathroom was modest but tidy. I dropped our bags while Marissa cracked open the windows to invite in the fresh air. "It's perfect," she whispered, holding me close. I kissed her cheek. "Yeah, you nailed it." That evening, dinner was served in the main hall with 6 other couples. The dining room was dim and glowing, the windows fogging from the cold outside. A man strummed guitar near the hearth while older staff circulated with pitchers of wine and platters of roasted chicken. Everyone was warm enough to talk. Most couples were our age, late 20s to early 30s. We sat beside a pair, Jordan and Elise, who chatted through most of the meal. They lived just a couple towns over and had attended this retreat once before. "Things get strange sometimes," Jordan muttered after a few glasses of Cabernet. Marissa perked up. "Strange how?" He smirked. "Weird noises, shadows moving around the trees. Some guy swore someone tapped on his cabin window in the night, but that side of the cabins just faces the forest." Elise rolled her eyes. "He loves trying to freak people out." Jordan grinned. "I'm serious. There's an odd stillness here. Too still." We laughed it off. It felt like part of the experience. You swapped eerie stories to make it memorable. Back at our cabin that night, the temperature had plummeted. Even near the windows, you could see vapor on your breath. We curled into the bed, the wood stove crackling in the corner. The adjoining room door was unlocked. We didn't give it a second thought since no one was next door. At about 2 a.m. I stirred awake. Something hung in the air. A smell, faint but sharp, like chemical staleness mixed with rot. It reminded me of when I once found a dead raccoon under our porch. Marissa groaned beside me. "Do you smell that?" I nodded, already pushing off the blankets. "Maybe a plumbing issue." The odor was stronger near the connecting door. I opened it and clicked on the small lamp by the dresser. The room was neat, unused beds, a dusty table, windows shut tight, yet something about it was off. I peered under the bed, opened the closet, pulled back the shower curtain. Nothing. But the stench was heavier here. I cracked a window, then retreated, shutting the door behind me. Marissa sprayed lavender on her pillow. We lay awake a while, me staring at shifting shadows sliding across the curtains. By morning, the smell had disappeared. We sipped coffee on the porch, watching deer glide through the tree line, then joined a group hike led by the resort's old shepherd mix, Max, who trotted ahead like he owned the woods. It all seemed normal again. That night, though, things changed. We dined again with Jordan and Elise, then listened to a musician play a set in the basement lounge before heading back, tipsy and ready for bed. Near midnight, while brushing our teeth, we heard it, a thud. Not loud, but intentional, from the adjoining room. I froze. "Did you hear that?" Marissa nodded, eyes wide. I pressed my ear to the connecting door. Another thump, heavier this time, like something being dropped deliberately. My pulse raced. "Probably just something tipped over," I lied. I grabbed a flashlight and pushed open the door. The room was dim with moonlight cutting through. The air was colder, unnaturally so. I swept the beam across the floor. Everything looked untouched. No fallen lamp, no critter, no loose board. I checked the bathroom again. Nothing. As I turned to leave, the flashlight skimmed the far corner. A figure. Tall, still, just out of the full circle of light. It looked like a coat rack, except there wasn't one. My breath locked in my throat as I edged backward, pulling the door shut and locking it. "Someone's in there," I whispered. "What?" Marissa whispered back. "I saw something. Someone in the corner." She grabbed her phone, but of course no service. I yanked on my jacket, slipped into boots, and told her not to open for anyone but me. Then I ran up the path to the main lodge. The desk was empty, but a bell sat there. I rang it again and again. Finally, a man in his late 60s stepped out from the kitchen, gruff in flannel. "What's wrong?" I spilled everything. The stench, the noises, the shape. His eyes darkened. "Cabin 7?" he asked. I nodded. He left briefly, then returned with a rifle. "Let's go." Back at the cabin, Marissa unlocked the door, pale and shaking. The man motioned me back while he went inside. Less than a minute later, he returned. "That room has another exit." Whoever it was slipped out. There was a small side door we hadn't even noticed. Marissa clung to me. "Who was it?" The man shook his head. "No idea, but you're not the first. We've had food vanish, blankets too. Somebody's sneaking in from the woods. Could be local, could be unwell." We didn't sleep at all. By morning, management refunded our stay and let us leave early. The man introduced himself as Richard, the owner's brother, and walked us to our car. "We'll be installing cameras," he said, "and locking those connecting doors." I didn't respond. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Between the trees, just for a split second, I swore I saw someone standing, still as stone, watching us disappear.